On Business Incorporated today. Ghana currency depreciates further. And Qatar to invest about $2.5 billion in state-held stakes in telecommunication in Egypt. Botswana lifts beef exports ban. Good afternoon. Welcome to Business Incorporated here on Channels Television. We'll start off as usual with market numbers. And what we have here in market numbers is that in Africa, it's a mixed bag. We see negative sentiments in Nigeria continuing. And we look at the numbers. It's, well, marginal at intraday, 0.02. Very unlike what we had yesterday. We hope that it turns before the close of trade at 44,310.11. In South Africa is also in the red, 0.73 down at intraday at 65,172.10. We look at other parts of the continent. There in Egypt, it's a different ball game for these countries because Egypt is more than 1% up at 10,262.73, and then for Kenya closed yesterday also positive, even though it's marginal at 0.05. We move over to the Middle East now to see what's going on in that market, and we see it's a lot of positive sentiment in the Middle East, continuing from yesterday. I see Abu Dhabi 0.33% up at more than 10,100.35. Dubai also up marginal 0.02. 3,389.50. And looking at other parts there, Saudi Arabia follows also in the positive, almost 1%, 0.91, and Qatar 0.03. Positive markets there at intraday for the Middle East. Well, it's very hot news going on in the UK now. That's why we move over to the UK now with Juliana standing by with, I think the space has to be watched and watched real close. Juliana, I know you when you spoke to Ladi this morning, you said it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Has the when come for Liz Truss?
Good afternoon, Innie. Well, I think the when has come. I'm just watching this fast developing story on my phone right now. We are expecting within the next few moments Liz Truss, the third female Prime Minister of Britain, a G7 nation, one of the strongest economies in the world, to announce her resignation. That's the breaking news that I've just been given. It has been a chaotic couple of days in Westminster, and her entire 6-week premiership has also been a complete shambles, which began with the tumbling of the pound to levels not seen against the dollar in decades. Yesterday, we had the resignation of Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, who was once a Conservative Party leadership hopeful. Just last week, Innie, about this time, we also had the resignation of Kwasi Kwarteng, the UK's first black Chancellor. And then yesterday, there was scuffles in the lobby. There was just a complete breakdown of power. And about an hour ago, we had the chairman of the Conservative Party, Jake Berry, alongside the Deputy Prime Minister, Therese Coffey, a very close ally of Liz Truss, as well as Sir Graham Brady, who is the chairman of the 1922 Select Committee, entering number 10 Downing Street. Liz Truss, the Prime Minister, is speaking just now. I don't know if we are able to take it live or if you're able to come back to me, Innie, for more reactions. But I do believe Liz Truss, the Conservative Prime Minister, who has only been in power for 6 weeks, is announcing her resignation live on television. This is an absolute shambles, and the UK is in serious trouble at the moment. It does not reflect well, and to say that is a complete understatement.
Yeah, Juliana, well, I know this is going to rattle the markets, move the pound one way or the other. And at the close of trade today, I just wonder where the markets and the pound will be.
I cannot deliver the mandate. That's a very good question. As I'm talking to you, I'm trying to listen to Liz Truss. But as you said, you know, the UK pound, she is resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. This is happening live as we speak. This is exactly what Liz Truss is saying. She's speaking outside number 10 Downing Street. I think what we can do, Idi, is perhaps get some reactions from Frankfurt. I'll stay in the studio, listen to Liz Truss and react, if not before, then after the break.
All right, Juliana, we'll see how we can get that in. Well, it's a hot news going on there in the UK. The Prime Minister, according to Juliana, listening right there, is resigning as we speak. And she's only spent a couple of days. And when you take away the number of days that was set for mourning for the Queen Elizabeth, who was buried, then we can count like on our fingers how many days she's been a Prime Minister. We hope to get updates on that either here on Business Incorporated, but our subsequent programs will follow up on that and see, of course, how the markets will close today. It will be very interesting to see how the market will close, how the pound will react to this, as we've seen a really turbulent couple of days in the UK following this. Well, let's move on now to the European Union, where leaders are meeting in Brussels as we speak. They'll meet today and tomorrow. And of course, their focus there is the energy markets, energy cap price, and the question of how to reduce soaring gas prices amid Russia's war in Ukraine. This is going to be a very busy time for them also, because it's kind of difficult for all of them to agree on a price cap. But let's hear what Chris Kober has found out following this story from Berlin. Hi, Chris. Good afternoon. How does the EU want to combat this issue or deal with this issue of gas prices being capped in that area?
It'll be difficult, that's pretty sure. In general, the Commission proposed that the EU as a bloc use its market power to buy gas collectively on the global market. The goal is that companies in the EU which import gas combine their demand and thereby are able to reach deals including lower prices. And while there seems to be support for the plan on a large scale, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban already voiced his criticism. The idea reminded him of the way the EU purchased COVID vaccines in recent times, which ended up being slow and expensive, according to Mr. Orban. But there certainly is a case for addressing the behavior on the market. Just this year, EU companies had been outbidding each other in trying to buy gas. That's something that should be avoided in the future, according to the Commission. The system is to be put into place by spring next year.
And then this issue of price caps seems so difficult for them to reach. Does it look like a reality?
First of all, because proposals by the EU Commission have been pretty vague on the issue. The Commission failed to come up with a specific maximum price the EU would be willing to pay. Also, the Commission has said that in case prices should again reach extreme peaks, a somewhat flexible price cap could be introduced as a last resort measure. Now, this reluctance by the EU Commission can be explained with major EU economies being against this price cap, to the dismay of supporters like Italy and France. Germany and the Netherlands have been vetoing the plan. They argue that is a threat to energy stability, citing fears that should such a price cap exist, gas suppliers could simply sell their product to customers who are willing to pay more. And by the way, that is a feature that EU countries have been making use of themselves when, as a bloc, outbidding other countries on the market for liquefied natural gas. We talked about it yesterday. And to reiterate Germany's stance on the matter, Chancellor Olaf Scholz just this morning in a parliamentary address said that such a proposed EU gas price cap can only work with non-EU partners, thereby raising the hurdles for such a move, because how likely is it for the EU to come to terms with countries outside the bloc when it often is painfully difficult and sometimes impossible to find common ground among all 27 member states?
All right, Chris, but how's the market looking at this time?
This week's recovery ended yesterday, and it's not returning today. In fact, German stocks are increasing their downward trend. The DAX losing 0.8% this morning. Surprisingly strong corporate earnings in the United States have not been convincing enough to stay invested in more risky assets. Instead, investors keep closely watching any signs for further monetary policy. So far, the market expects the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates in the United States by 75 basis points for a fourth time next month. Also, Wednesday's data on declining home constructions in the United States fueled concerns about the state of the economy.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for that. We'll certainly follow up with you tomorrow. Okay, so moving on now, we go to the Asian markets, and what we see there is that the shares in Asia Pacific traded lower today as economic fears weigh. The Japanese yen weakened past 150 for a dollar late in Asia's afternoon, a 32-year low against the greenback. The Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong pared some of its earlier losses and traded 1.33% lower in the final hour of trade. And then the offshore one strengthened after Bloomberg reported that officials are debating reducing COVID-19 quarantines to 7 days from 10. It was last 7.25 per dollar. In mainland China, the Shanghai Composite closed 0.31% lower at 3,035.05 after struggling for direction, while the Shenzhen Component shed 0.56% to 10,965.33. In the United States, NASDAQ 100 futures slid as traders weighed Tesla's latest quarterly figures, along with rates reaching fresh multi-year highs. Futures tied to the NASDAQ 100 fell. Let's look at the numbers there. Dow Jones futures in the green at 0.48%. S&P futures also in the green, 0.28% at 3,717. NASDAQ futures, remember this was driven very well by Netflix yesterday, but that effect is off now. 0.06 in the green. Features, those are the numbers for the U.S. features. Meanwhile, the benchmark 10-year Treasury yield reached a high of 4.18% today, briefly trading at levels not seen since 2008. It was last up just 2 basis points at 4.14%. Rising rates have been a headwind for stocks all year as the Federal Reserve continues to try and cool off inflationary pressures not seen in decades. Oil prices rose as caution over tightening supply countered the negative impact of uncertain demand. And news that the United States will release more crude from its reserve. Brent crude futures for December ended up $2.38 at $92.41 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude for November, which is expiring today, ended at $85.55 a barrel. And that's up $2.73. In the previous session, the benchmarks hit a 2-week low after U.S. President Joe Biden said he plans to release 15 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Biden, in his remarks, noted that the United States plans to repurchase oil for the reserve if prices fall enough. The reserve release would be the last sale from the planned sale of 180 million barrels of oil announced shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine in February. In the metals market now, gold prices lingered at 3-week through on Thursday, pressured by rising U.S. dollar and Treasury yields amid worries that the Federal Reserve would persist with sharp rate hikes. Spot gold inched down 0.1% to 1,627 per ounce as of, and prices earlier hit their lowest level since September 28. U.S. gold futures were down 0.1%. The dollar index held steady, having risen 0.8%, and the benchmark 10-year Treasury yields hit a peak at mid-2008. U.S. economic activity expanded modestly in recent weeks, although it was flat in some regions and declined in a couple of others. The Fed said that they are pessimistic about the outlook. Spot silver fell 0.4% to $18.36 per ounce. Platinum dropped 0.6% to $878.52, and palladium slipped 0.6% to $1,988.78 per ounce. Let's take a short break now. When we come back, we would see if we can follow up with that resignation in the UK, if we have that feed. And then, of course, we'll settle on the African continent and give you some stories from there. Join us again. You're welcome back. Of course, we're still following that story, what's going on in the UK. Juliana, our correspondent over there in London, had told us just when we had her earlier on the program to say that the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, was at that time speaking and resigning as the leader of the party. But we hope to have Juliana or the sound bites from Liz Truss to tell us, give us updates before the program ends. So we'll stay on that. But just before we get all of that, Côte d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative has the goal of price control. 4 countries, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, 2 countries, I beg your pardon, Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana are already members of that initiative. Now Nigeria and Cameroon intend to join, and of course it's all to control price. But let's find out, that's for cocoa, but we'll find out if this is good for Nigerian farmers or not. We have Maiwa Esther joining us now from Victoria Island. Maiwa is analyst with Financial Derivatives Company. Hi, Esther. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. This price control thing, I know that Ghana is top on it, but some farmers in Nigeria have been happy that there's no price control on cocoa in Nigeria. So now that we are talking about joining this initiative, do you see it as positive for the farmers?
Thank you very much, Ini. First of all, I would like to say that one thing we must understand about this pricing policy is the fact that the chocolates, which is a byproduct of cocoa, it's price elastic, and that means that a change in the price of this commodity might discourage, probably an increase in the price might discourage people from buying the commodity, especially considering the fact that inflation is now biting into people's pockets. So it's really going to be hard for, it's not going to be that easy for that pricing policy to work. Apart from that, we also have the institutional framework in Nigeria. How transparent is it? How credible is it? And the framework must be designed in such a way that farmers in the country should be able to benefit from that income. So if it should not be politically led. So that's that, and also looking at the quality of our cocoa bean, Côte d'Ivoire compared to Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, the quality of our cocoa bean is still not really so competitive. So all of this would actually limit that from happening.
Yeah, but because we're hoping that perhaps that price control could encourage more farmers to get into cocoa, because we know that Nigeria is hardly scratching the surface of the potentials that we have when it comes to cocoa. So, I mean, yes. I guess it would have been an encouraging factor.
Yes, it is an encouraging factor, but, like I said initially, if we must, the characteristics of the demand must be well understood, and looking at the fact that inflation is quite high for European countries who are, the large buyers of this product, it's really, I think Germany, it's about, for UK, it's about 10.1, it went back up. So all of this actually limits, if this, at the end of the day, they may end up selling it at a discount, and because compared to crude oil, it doesn't deteriorate, but for cocoa, it's subject to different activities, and so if all of that are not, if it's not, it can't be stored for a very long time. So compared to all of that, it will be very, very difficult to. So they just have to sell it. Yeah. They just have to sell it. Probably have to sell it at a discount, even.
Yeah,
all of those factors have to be considered. Yes,
Exactly, to avoid total wastage. Thank you so much, Esther
yes,
Mayowa. The cocoa space is a space that is interesting
yes,
to us. Thank you so
yes.
much for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, I think we have Juliana now joining us. She has heard what Liz Truss has said and here to give us an update. Hi, Juliana. We have you back, right?
Yes, there's a lot to unpack, Innie. Where do we start? I suppose we start with the breaking news that took place at the start of your show, and that is that Liz Truss, after just 6 weeks, has publicly announced her resignation. It was a very short statement, probably the shortest resignation statement we've had from a Prime Minister. It was about 60 seconds long. She said that she had spoken to King Charles III and announced that she would be dissolving her government before meeting with administrators of the Conservative Party. What's quite interesting in that statement is that she did say a new leader would be announced within a week, but that's also causing a huge stir amongst the general public. I've just had a quick look on Twitter, and amongst opposition parties, because we have had five Conservative Prime Ministers in the past 6 years. People are saying absolutely not. You're not just going to shoo in a new leader without taking it to the public. So there are growing calls for a general election. And if that is not announced, people are saying they are willing to go to the streets because they're just not happy with the Conservative Party. It has been absolute chaos, Innie, which is such a shame because I've been saying the words chaos and unprecedented for the past couple of years. But that is just how you can describe the political environment in this country at the moment. We saw it with the pound, which dipped to record lows against the dollar. We're not sure that even after the market turmoil has managed to be swept up a little bit, whether or not these consequences from the Liz Truss premiership will last for years to come. But that was the breaking news that happened at the bottom of the hour, 1:30, Liz Truss resigning as Prime Minister. It's a fast developing story, and now we just wait to see who is the top contender to take over. Sources are saying it could be Rishi Sunak, former Chancellor, the man who went head-to-head with her, and there could be some sort of double team between her and Penny Mordaunt. Now, before now, lots of people were saying it would be Jeremy Hunt, who is the Chancellor. He has just tweeted that he is not standing as PM, and some say that that is a shoo-in for Rishi Sunak. But then we can't outrule Boris Johnson, the embattled Prime Minister, because lots of Conservatives loved him, and so did the country. Will he be making a comeback? We just don't know. It's all to play for right now.
Yeah, Juliana, the uncertainty is really, really palpable at this time. I mean, reactions and anticipation and expectations from everywhere. Well, I am so sure that World Today, they're going to have you engaged on this. So I think you just stand by with more information, and the foreign desk will certainly reach out to you. But thank you so much for giving us that breaking story. Just it came out hot and sizzling at the right time.
Thanks, Cedi.
All right, a lot happening in the UK, so you need to follow our foreign stories, foreign programs. They're going to stay on that story and give you every bit of information as it unravels. As we're about to wrap up here on Business Incorporated, we'd like to tell you that the woes of Ghana's Cedi, that's their currency, continues as it depreciated further to about 13.75 to the US dollar less than a day after reaching 13 cedis. And then this is equivalent to about 12% depreciation in only 4 days of the week. We've been talking a whole lot. Yesterday we had a full conversation on what's going on in Ghana. Not very good times for them with their inflation over 30% at this time. And then in South Africa, the smaller of the two main labor unions at the state-owned ports and rail operator Transnet said it has called off that strike we've been following over the week over wages that's curbed a key export. The union had initially rejected its rival United National Transport Union's acceptance of Transnet's pay offer and said industrial action will continue until workers are sure they won't lose their jobs. Well, UNTU had agreed to a 3-year deal with the company for increases of as much as 6%. And also, Qatar is in advanced talks to buy about $2.5 billion of state-held stakes in Egypt's biggest mobile network operator and other companies as the North African nation lines up funding to cope with the economic fallout of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. Under the Potential Pact, which is expected to be finalized by the end of this year, Qatar Investment Authority will acquire 20% of Vodafone Egypt from Telecom Egypt company. And QIA is the Gulf States Foreign Wealth Fund and oversees an estimated $445 billion in assets. And finally, on the program, in Botswana, cattle farmers, which is one of Africa's top beef exporters to the EU, the European Union, they've welcomed the renewed beef exports to Europe, and the move follows a 2-month ban that followed an outbreak of foot and mouth disease and the culling of thousands of cows. Botswana officials say the August outbreak near the border with Zimbabwe has been brought under control. That's why that's being called off now. And beef exports will only be allowed from 7 of the country's 19 agricultural zones. That's the program. Was a fast one for me, very packed, but don't forget that you can get updates on what's going on in the UK as the Prime Minister resigns. You get it on our foreign programs, and of course News Track, which will be up every hour here on Channels Television. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Let's do this again tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day.